And today we have the Member of Parliament for Kingston and the Islands leading the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Quand l'ambroise est bon, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
I have the honor to inform the House that a communication has been received as follows. J'ai l'honneur d'informer.
I have the honor to inform the House that a communication has been received as follows.
September 21st, 2020, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to inform you that Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Julie Payette, Governor-General of Canada, will arrive at the Senate of Canada building at 2:10 p.m. on Wednesday, the 23rd day of September 2020. When it has been indicated that all is in readiness, Her Excellency will proceed to the chamber of the Senate to formally open the second session of the 43rd Parliament of Canada. Yours sincerely, Assunta Di Lorenzo. Monsieur le Président, j'ai l'honneur de...
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to inform you that Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Julie Payette, Governor-General of Canada, will arrive at the Senate of Canada building at 2:10 p.m. on Wednesday, the 23rd day of September 2020. When it has been indicated that all is in readiness, Her Excellency will proceed to the chamber of the Senate to formally open the second session of the 43rd Parliament of Canada. Yours sincerely, Assunta Di Lorenzo.
There's a problem with interpretation, so we're just going to look into that.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll repeat everything in French. How's that? Do you want me to wait, or? Okay, we seem to be having a problem with interpretation. On a des problèmes avec l'interprétation.
We have some problems with the interpretation system. If you cannot hear, please let us know. Can you hear?
S'il y a des problèmes.
If there are any issues, is it working? Okay.
Parfait.
Perfect.
While I am in the Senate, the reading of the speech from the throne will be broadcast live on the screens in the chamber. Les députés peuvent
The members of Parliament can watch from their seats or in the gallery. In order to listen to the speech, the members must use their earpiece. As usual, interpretation will be available.
Members may watch and listen to the televised speech in rooms 035B and 241A in West Block.
Now you recognize the House Leader.
I believe the Honourable Government House Leader has something to say, or a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. On a point of order, first I'd like to say that it's great to see you and great to see all the colleagues here in this room. On that point of order, Mr. Speaker, that there have been discussions amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I think that you will find unanimous consent to adopt the following motion: that notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice of the House until Friday, December 11, 2020, A, members may participate in proceedings of the House either in person or by video conference. B. Members who participate remotely in a sitting of the House are counted for the purpose of quorum. C. Any reference in the standing orders to the need for members to rise or to be in their place, as well as any reference to the chair, the table, or the chamber shall be interpreted in a manner consistent with the virtual nature of the proceedings. D. The application of Standing Order 17 shall be suspended. E. The application of Standing Order 62 shall be suspended for any member participating remotely. F. In Standing Orders 26.2, 53.4, 56.13, and 56.22, the reference to the number of members required to rise be replaced with the word 5. G. The documents may be laid before the House or presented to the House electronically, provided that 1. Documents deposited pursuant to Standing Order 32.1 shall be deposited with the Clerk of the House electronically. 2. During routine proceedings, members who participate remotely may table documents or present petitions or reports to the House electronically, provided that the documents are transmitted to the clerk prior to their intervention. 3. Any petition presented pursuant to Standing Order 36.5 may be filed with the clerk electronically. H. Should the House resolve itself in a committee of the whole, the chair may preside from the Speaker's chair. I. When a question that could lead to a recorded division is put to the House, in lieu of calling for the yeas and nays, one representative of a recognized party can rise to request a recorded vote. J. When a recorded division is requested in respect of a debatable motion, including any division arising as a consequence of the application of Standing Order 61.2 or Standing Order 78, but excluding any division in relation to motions relating to the address in reply to the speech from the throne or the business of supply occurring on the last supply day of a period other than as provided in Standing Order 81.18b, or arising as a consequence of an order made pursuant to Standing Order 57.1, before 2 p.m. on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, it shall stand deferred until the conclusion of oral questions at that day's sitting, or 2. After 2 p.m. on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or at any time on a Friday, it shall stand deferred until the conclusion of oral questions at the next sitting day that is not a Friday, provided that if a recorded division on the previous question is deferred and the motion is subsequently adopted, the recorded division on the original question shall not be deferred, provided that any extension of time pursuant to Standing Order 47.7.1 shall not exceed 90 minutes. K. When a recorded division, which would have ordinarily been deemed deferred to immediately before the time provided for private members' business on a Wednesday governed by this order, is requested, the said division is deemed to have been deferred until the conclusion of oral questions on the same Wednesday. L. For greater certainty, this order shall not limit the application of Standing Order 45.7. M. When a recorded division is to be held, except recorded divisions defer to the conclusions of oral questions, the bells to call in the members shall be sounded for not more than 30 minutes. N. Les votes par appel nominal.
Recorded divisions shall take place by electronic means, provided that 1. The House administration be directed to develop and test a secure remote voting application that would include a visual component to authenticate members' identities and a notification to all members' House-managed mobile devices. 2. Until such time as a remote voting application is ready for use, recorded divisions shall take place in the usual way for members participating in person and by roll call for members participating by video conference, provided that members participating by video conference must have their camera on for the duration of the vote. 3. When testing on the remote voting application has been completed and feedback received from members, if the Speaker has received a notice from the House leaders of all recognized parties in the House stating that they are satisfied that it is ready to be used, he shall so inform the House, and until Friday, December 11, 2020, all subsequent recorded divisions shall be taken using the remote voting application and be governed by the provisions in subparagraphs 4 to 7. Point 4. Before a recorded division is held by remote voting application, the Speaker shall announce the period of time allotted for members to cast their vote electronically, provided that, if 2 or more votes are to be held successively without intervening debate, members may vote on more than one question during the time allotted if these questions are not dependent on another motion or proceeding. 5. 30 minutes shall be allotted for a maximum of 10 votes occurring using the remote voting application, and when necessary, 3 minutes shall be allotted for each additional vote. 6. The result of each vote occurring using the remote voting application is announced at the end of the time provided for voting. 7. When the question is dependent on another motion or proceeding, the Speaker announces each result, and 10 minutes are allotted to vote using the remote voting application on each subsequent question necessary to dispose of the item. 8. If there are, in the event of technical issues with either electronic voting system, the Speaker shall be empowered to take all the necessary steps to ensure the integrity of the voting process. O. During meetings of standing, special, and legislative committees and the liaison committee, as well as their subcommittees where applicable, members may participate either in person or by video conference, and witnesses shall participate remotely, except for the first meeting to elect a chair, which shall be held virtually, provided that priority use of House resources for meetings shall be established by an agreement of the whips. And for virtual or hybrid meetings, the following provisions shall apply. 1. Members who participate remotely shall be counted for the purposes of quorum. 2. Except for those decided unanimously or on division, all questions shall be decided by a recorded vote. 3. When more than one motion is proposed for the election of a chair or a vice chair of a committee, any motion received after the initial one shall be taken as a notice of motion, and such motions shall be put to the committee until one is adopted. 4. Public proceedings shall be made available to the public via the House of Commons website. 5. In-camera proceedings may be conducted in a manner that takes into account the potential risks to confidentiality inherent in meetings with remote participants. 6. Notices of membership substitutions pursuant to Standing Order 114.2 and requests pursuant to Standing Order 1064 may be filed with the clerk of each committee by email.
The membership of the standing committees, other than the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, be constituted by each recognized party's whip, depositing with the clerk of the House the list of the members to serve on the committees no later than Tuesday, October 6, 2020, provided that the chief government whip shall name 5 members of the committees with a total membership of 11 and 6 members of the committees with a total membership of 12. The chief opposition whip shall name 4 members of each committee. The whip of the Bloc Québécois shall name 1 member of each committee, and the whip of the New Democratic Party shall name 1 member of each committee. Q. Provided that 1. The whip of recognized parties shall deposit with the clerk of the House the list of the members to serve on the committee no later than Tuesday, October 6, 2020, and 2. The evidence and documentation received by the Special Committee on the Canada-China relations during the first session of the 43rd Parliament be referred to this committee and taken into consideration in this session. And R. The clerk of the House shall convene organizational meetings of every committee whose membership is named under paragraph P and subparagraph Q. 1, no later than Monday, October 19, 2020, including as necessary during the period of adjournment beginning Friday, October 9, 2020, provided that the organizational meetings for the following committees shall be held no later than Friday, October 9th, but no earlier than Thursday, October 8th, 2020, and may be convened with 24 hours notice. 1. The Standing Committee on Health. 2. The Standing Committee on Finance. 3. The Standing Committees on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. 4. The Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. 5. The Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. 6. The Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development. 7. The Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. 8. The Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. And 9. The Special Committee on Canada-China Relations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does the a point of clarification, the honourable member for Grey Bruce?
Yeah, just could we confirm that in paragraph J2, that the last sentence, provided that any extension of time pursuant to Standing Order 4571, I believe it was read 4771, shall not exceed 90 minutes. Thank you.
Very good. No more clarifications. It was a long one. Okay, good. Does the honourable minister have the unanimous consent of the House to move the motion? Agreed? Agreed. La Chambre a entendu l'énoncé.
The House has heard the text of the motion. Is it pleasure of the House to adopt the motion?
Adopté.
Carried.
Il est de mon devoir de faire savoir à la
It is my duty to inform the House of the vacancies that have occurred in its membership.
No member for Electoral District of Toronto Centre by resignation effective August 21st, 2020. Mr. Michael Levitt, member for the Electoral District of York Centre by resignation effective September 1st, 2020. Conformément à l'alinéa 25.1.
Pursuant to Standing Order, I have sent to the Director General of Elections orders to issue electoral writs in order to fill these vacancies.
Honour to inform the House that the following members have been appointed as members of the Board of Internal Economy for the purpose and under the provisions of the Parliament Act of Canada, the Parliament of Canada Act, subsection 52, namely Monsieur Deltel, Mr. Richards, représentant du caucus Parti conservateur.
Representative of the Conservative Party caucus.
We just wait for the black.
Going to wait for the black rod now. Nous allons attendre l'arrivée du huissier du Sénat. Merci. Order, à l'ordre. While we're waiting for the black rod to be here, I would like to make a statement concerning private members' business. As members know, the standing orders guarantee the continuity of private members' business from one session to the next within the same parliament. En pratique, cela signifie...
In practical terms, this means that notwithstanding prorogation, the list for the consideration of private members' business established at the beginning of the 43rd Parliament shall continue for the duration of this Parliament.
Par conséquent,
as a result, in accordance with Standing Order 86-1, all items of private members' business originating in the House of Commons that were listed on the order paper during the previous session shall be deemed to have been considered and approved at all stages, completed at the time of prorogation.
We'll keep the same number as in the first session of the 43rd Parliament. More specifically, all bills and motions standing on the list of items outside the order of precedence shall continue to stand. Bills that had met the notice requirements and were published in the order paper but not yet been introduced will be republished on the order paper under the heading Introduction of Private Members' Bills in the order of business, and bills that had not yet been published on the order paper need to be recertified by the Office of the Law Clerk and Parliamentary Counsel and be resubmitted for publication on the notice paper. Of course, the 30 items listed in the order of precedence at the time of prorogation shall continue to stand. Au terme de la première session de la présente législature,
at the end of the first session of this Parliament in prorogation, the House had not had the opportunity to debate private members' business in the order of precedence. With the opening of the second session this fall, the next step in the process will be to hold a meeting of the Subcommittee on Private Members' Business so that they can study each item in the order of precedence. Debate on private members' business will then be able to begin shortly after the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs has presented the report of the subcommittee on votable items of private members' business.
So that this information will provide members with a greater understanding of the process for private members' business during the second session of this Parliament, I invite any members who wish to obtain further information to consult the table officers who will be happy to answer your questions. Je remercie les députés.
I thank members for their attention.
Order. Admit the messenger. Faites entrer le messager.
Mr. Speaker, a message from Her Excellency the Governor General. Monsieur le Président, un message de Son Excellence la Gouverneure Générale.
Admit the messenger.
Mr. Speaker, it is the pleasure of Her Excellency the Governor General that this honorable House attend her immediately in the chamber of the Senate. Monsieur le Président, c'est le plaisir de...
Mr. Speaker, it is the pleasure of Her Excellency the Governor General that this honorable House attend her immediately in the Senate chamber.
Order à l'ordre.
Honourable Senators, members of the House of Commons, fellow Canadians, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, chaque jour, des millions.
Every day on our shared planet, millions face hardships that test the human spirit. Extreme weather, wildfires, poverty, conflicts, discrimination, and inequalities. Rarely, though, has all of humanity faced a single common insidious enemy, an invisible enemy that respects no borders, thrives anywhere, hits anyone.
To overcome a pandemic requires the work and resolve of every order of government, of every community, and of every one of us. We don't decide when hardship comes, but here in Canada, we have decided how we wanted to address it. We have adapted in remarkable ways. Nous, les Canadiens, avons fait notre part.
We Canadians did our part. We changed our habits, postponed our plans, switched to telework, or had to completely reinvent our work, all this while caring for one another.
Nous sommes immensément redevables.
We owe an immense debt to those who served and still serve on the front lines, to healthcare personnel and essential workers, women and men in uniform, volunteers and leaders everywhere in the country.
There has been a lot of suffering, and we all mourn those who have passed. We trust science to lead the fight until a safe and effective vaccine becomes available. But until then, we must keep our guards up, using the tools that are available to us now, such as testing, treatments, and physical distancing measures. Like a reed in high winds, we may sway, but we will not break, because our roots are firmly in place, our goals clear, and because we have hope. The hope that lifts the soul on dark days and keeps us focused on the future. Les Canadiens ont déjà
Canadians have lived through uncertain times before and have always prevailed because determination, concern for others, courage, and common sense define our nation.
All those qualities to bear once again and continue to work for the common good and for a better, safer, and more just society. This is who we are and what will see us through to brighter days. For over 150 years, parliamentarians have worked together to chart Canada's path forward. Your predecessors met when Confederation was only a few months old, setting the course for a young country. They stood united through Canada's toughest days, leading the nation through wars and depression. And as they did, each parliamentarian was called to meet their times. Today, Canadians expect you to do the same. They expect you to work together on their behalf and meet this crucial moment. Less than a year ago, we gathered here for a throne speech to open the 43rd Parliament. Since then, our realities have changed, and so must our approach. Over 9,000 Canadians have died in 6 months. For our neighbors in the United States, this figure is over 200,000. Globally, it's nearly 1 million. But these are not just numbers. These are friends and family, neighbors and colleagues. The pandemic is the story of parents who have died alone, without loved ones to hold their hands. It is the story of kids who have gone months without seeing friends, of workers who have lost their jobs.
The last 6 months have laid bare fundamental gaps in our society and in societies around the world. This pandemic has been hard for everyone, but for those who were already struggling, the burden has been even heavier. For parents, and especially mums, who are facing impossible choices between kids and career. For racialized Canadians and Indigenous peoples who are confronted by systemic barriers. For young people who are worried about what their future will hold. For seniors who are isolated, frightened, and most at risk. And for workers who, while earning the lowest wages in the most precarious sectors, have been on the front lines of the pandemic. We must address these challenges of today. We also cannot forget about the tests of the future. The world came into this pandemic facing the risks and consequences of climate change. A lesson that COVID-19 has taught us is that we need to match challenges with decisiveness and determination. On all these fronts, health and the economy, equality and the environment, we must take bold action. The government will meet these challenges.
The government's approach will have 4 foundations. The first foundation of this plan is to fight the pandemic and save lives. The second foundation of the government's plan is supporting people and businesses through this crisis as long as it lasts, whatever it takes. Effectively dealing with the health crisis is the best thing we can do for the economy. Government action has already helped Canadians stay safe and buffered the worst economic impacts. The third foundation is to build back better to create a stronger, more resilient Canada. To do this, we must keep strengthening the middle class and helping people working hard to join in and continue creating jobs and building long-term competitiveness with clean growth. We must also keep building safer communities for everyone. The fourth and final foundation of this plan is to stand up for who we are as Canadians. We cannot forget what has made us a country that is welcoming, a country that celebrates 2 official languages, that achieves progress on gender equality, walks the road of reconciliation, and fights discrimination of every kind. This is our generation's crossroads. Do we move Canada forward or let people be left behind? Do we come out of this stronger or paper over the cracks that the crisis has exposed? This is the time to remember who we are as Canadians. This is the opportunity to contain the global crisis and build back better together. The first foundation of the government's approach is protecting Canadians from COVID-19. This is priority number 1. It is the job of the federal government to look out for all Canadians, and especially for our most vulnerable. We need to work together because beating this virus is a Team Canada effort. Over the last 6 months, Canadians have stood united and strong. Their actions embody what has always been the purpose of the federal government, bringing Canadians together to achieve common goals. Personal protective equipment has been shipped across the country. Members of the Canadian Forces were there in long-term care homes. Close to 9 million Canadians were helped with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, and over 3.5 million jobs were supported by the wage subsidy. The government will continue to have people's backs, just like Canadians have each other's backs. Through the first wave, contact tracing and testing ramped up across the country. The surge this fall further reinforces what we already know, that we must do even more. The federal government will be there to help the provinces increase their testing capacity. Canadians should not be waiting in line for hours to get a test. Du même coup, le gouvernement.
At the same time, the government is pursuing every technology and every option for faster tests for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. As soon as tests are approved for safe use in Canada, the government will do everything it can to see them deployed. The government will also create a federal testing assistance response team to quickly meet surge testing needs, including in remote and isolated communities. Local public health authorities are the backbone of our nation's efforts to stop outbreaks before they start. As members of the communities they protect, they know the devastating economic impact a lockdown order can have. To prevent small clusters from becoming major outbreaks, communities may need to enact short-term closure orders. To make that decision easier for the public health authorities and to help ease the impact that science and evidence-based decisions can have on local businesses in the short term, the government will work to target additional financial support directly to businesses which have to temporarily shut down as a result of a local public health decision. This will ensure that decisions are made with the health of Canadians as the first priority. The government will also continue to work on what communities need more broadly. The government has already invested over $19 billion for a safe restart agreement with provinces and territories to support everything from the capacity of healthcare systems to securing PPE, personal protective equipment. To address the challenges faced by provinces and territories as they reopen classrooms, the federal government invested $2 billion in the Safe Return to Class Fund, along with new funding for First Nations communities. This is money to keep kids and staff safe in the classroom, whether that's by helping schools buy cleaning supplies or upgrading ventilation.
Build on federal investment to support people who are most at risk and those who care for them, including with a federal wage top-up for personal support workers. People on the front lines who have been looking after seniors do vital work, and the government will continue to have their backs. At the same time, the government will continue to support Canadians as they take action to keep each other safe. Les gens font déjà leur part.
Already, people are doing their part by wearing masks. That's important, and we can build on that commitment. Working with private sector partners, the federal government created the COVID Alert app. Canadians living in Ontario, Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick and Saskatchewan now have an extra tool to keep themselves and others safe. The government hopes all the others will sign on, so that people in all parts of the country can both do their part and be better protected.
Le gouvernement continue.
The government will also continue to work on getting Canadians the personal protective equipment they need. This spring, the government issued a call, and thousands of Canadian businesses and manufacturers responded. From shop floors to big and small companies, Canada's dynamic businesses met the challenges as their workers stepped up. In less than 6 months, Canadians are now manufacturing almost all types of personal protective equipment. The government will continue building that domestic capacity while securing supply chains to keep Canadians safe and create jobs. Canadians are pulling together, whether that's with PPE manufacturing, through the COVID Alert app, or by wearing a mask. In the same way, Canadian researchers and scientists are pitching in to the Team Canada effort with their knowledge and expertise.
À long terme.
In the long run, the best way to end this pandemic is with a safe and effective vaccine. Canada's vaccine strategy is all about ensuring that Canadians will be able to get a vaccine once it is ready. There are many types of potential candidates. Canada is exploring the full range of options. The government has already secured access to vaccine candidates and therapeutics while investing in manufacturing here at home. And to get the vaccines out to Canadians once they're ready, the government has made further investments in our capacity for vaccine distribution. From the Vaccine Task Force that provides the best advice on vaccine purchasing and rollout, to the Immunity Task Force looking at how COVID-19 is affecting vulnerable populations. Canada's top scientific minds are guiding the government every step of the way. The medical and scientific fight against this virus is crucial, and so are the livelihoods of every single Canadian worker and family. So the second foundation of the government's approach is supporting Canadians through this crisis. The economic impact of COVID-19 on Canadians has already been worse than the 2008 financial crisis. These consequences will not be short-lived.
The time for austerity. Canada entered this crisis in the best fiscal positions of its peers, and the government is using that fiscal firepower on things like the Canada Emergency Response Benefit and on the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, so that Canadians, businesses, and our entire economy have the support needed to weather the storm. Canadians should not have to choose between health and their job, just like Canadians should not have to take on debt that their government can better shoulder. People losing their jobs is perhaps the clearest consequence of the global economic shock that Canadians, like those in other countries, have faced. The CERB helped people stay healthy at home while being able to keep food on the table. The CEWS helped people keep their jobs or be rehired if they had been laid off. But there is still more to be done. Unemployment is in the double digits, and underemployment is high. Women, racialized Canadians, and young people have borne the brunt of job losses. Canadians need good jobs that they can rely on. To help make that happen, the government will launch a campaign to create over 1 million jobs, restoring employment to previous levels. This will be done by using a range of tools, including direct investments in the social sector and infrastructure, immediate training to quickly skill up workers, and incentives for employers to hire and retain workers. One way the government will create these jobs is by extending the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy right through the next summer. The government will work with businesses and labor to ensure the program meets the needs of the health and economic situation as it evolves. Une autre façon pour le gouvernement.
Another example of how the government will create jobs is by significantly scaling up the youth employment and skills strategy to provide more paid work experiences next year for young Canadians. Now more than ever, Canadians must work together, including by eliminating remaining barriers between provinces to full, free, internal trade to get the economy back up and running and Canadians back to work. With the job losses that Canadians have faced, it became clear early on that many people would need help until they could find work once again. But existing income support systems were not designed to handle this unprecedented situation. That's why the government moved quickly to create the Canada Emergency Response Benefit as a temporary program to help millions of Canadians get through a very difficult time. With the economic restart now well underway, CERB recipients should instead be supported by the employment insurance system. For people who would not traditionally qualify for EI, the government will create the Transitional Canada Recovery Benefit. Over the coming months, the EI system will become the sole delivery mechanism for employment benefits, including for Canadians who did not qualify for EI before the pandemic. This pandemic has shown that Canada needs an employment insurance system for the 21st century, including for the self-employed and those working in the gig economy.
And in particular, low-income women have been hit hardest by COVID-19. This crisis has been described as the she session. Many women have bravely served on the front lines of this crisis in our communities and by shouldering the burden of unpaid care work at home. We must not let the legacy of this pandemic be one of rolling back the clock on women's participation in the workplace, nor one of backtracking on the social and political gain women and allies have fought so hard to secure. The government will create an action plan for women in the economy to help more women get back into the workforce and to ensure a feminist, intersectional response to this pandemic and recovery. This plan will be guided by a task force of experts whose diverse voices will power a whole-of-government approach. It has been nearly 50 years since the Royal Commission on the Status of Women outlined the necessity of childcare services for women's social and economic equality. We have long understood that Canada cannot succeed if half the population is held back. Canadians need more accessible, affordable, inclusive, and high-quality childcare. Recognizing the urgency of this challenge, the government will make a significant, long-term, sustained investment to create a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. Le gouvernement tablera.
The government will build on previous investments, learn from the model that already exists in Quebec, and work with all the provinces and territories to ensure that high-quality care is accessible to all. There is broad consensus from all parts of society, including business and labor leaders, that the time is now. The government also remains committed to subsidizing before and after-school program costs. With the way that this pandemic has affected parents and families, flexible care options for primary school children are more important than ever. The government will also accelerate the women's entrepreneurship strategy, which has already helped women across Canada grow their businesses. As the government invests in people, it will continue to support job-creating businesses. Small businesses are the lifeblood of communities and the backbone of the economy. The government introduced a range of supports for Canadian businesses, from help with payroll through the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy to assistance with expenses through interest-free loans. COVID-19 has caused businesses across the country, both large and small, to rethink their approaches. Entrepreneurs and business owners are looking at more digital options, more creative solutions, and more climate-friendly investments. The government will help businesses adapt for the future and thrive.
In addition to extending the wage subsidy, the government will take further steps to bridge vulnerable businesses to the other side of the pandemic by expanding the Canada Emergency Business Account to help businesses with fixed costs, by improving the Business Credit Availability Program, and by introducing further support for industries that have been the hardest hit, including travel and tourism, and cultural industries like the performing arts. This COVID-19 emergency has had huge costs, but Canada would have been in a deeper recession and in a bigger long-term deficit if the government had done less. With interest rates so low, central banks can only do so much to help. There is a global consensus that governments must do more. Government can do so while also locking in the low cost of borrowing for decades to come. This government will preserve Canada's fiscal advantage and continue to be guided by values of sustainability and prudence. There are two distinct needs. The first is to help Canadians in the short term, to do whatever it takes, using whatever fiscal firepower is needed to support people and businesses during the pandemic. The best way to keep the economy strong is to keep Canadians healthy. The second need is to build back better with a sustainable approach for future generations. As the government builds a plan for stimulus and recovery, this must be done responsibly. In the longer term, the government will focus on targeted investments to strengthen the middle class, build resiliency, and generate growth. The government will also identify additional ways to tax extreme wealth inequality, including by concluding work to limit the stock option deduction for wealthy individuals at large, established corporations, and addressing corporate tax avoidance by digital giants. Un constat s'impose. Les géants du
Web giants are taking Canadians' money while imposing their own priorities. Things must change and will change. The government will act to ensure their revenue is shared more fairly with our creators and media, and will also require them to contribute to the creation, production, and distribution of our stories on screen, in lyrics, in music, and in writing. This fall, the government will release an update to Canada's COVID-19 Economic Response Plan. This will outline the government's economic and fiscal position, provide fiscal projections, and set out new measures to implement this throne speech. This update will make clear that the strength of the middle class and the well-being of all Canadians remain Canada's key measures of success.
Every Canadian and defend everybody's ability to succeed. We also need to focus on the future and on building back better. This forms the third foundation of the government's approach. Around the world, advanced economies are realizing that things should not go back to business as usual. COVID-19 has exposed the vulnerabilities in our society. The government will create a resiliency agenda for the middle class and for people working hard to join it. This will include addressing the gaps in our social systems, investing in healthcare, and creating jobs. It will also include fighting climate change and maintaining a commitment to fiscal sustainability and economic growth as the foundation of a strong and vibrant society. Nous devons a priori reconnaître que l'un des
Central to this is recognizing that one of the greatest tragedies of this pandemic is the lives lost in long-term care homes. Elders deserve to be safe, respected, and live in dignity. Although long-term care falls under provincial and territorial jurisdiction, the federal government will take any action it can to support seniors while working alongside the provinces and territories. The government will work with Parliament on criminal code amendments to explicitly penalize those who neglect seniors under their care, putting them in danger. The government will also work with the provinces and territories to set new national standards for long-term care so that seniors get the best support possible. The government will also take additional action to help people stay in their homes longer. The government remains committed to increasing old age security once a senior turns 75 years of age, and to boosting the Canada Pension Plan Survivors Benefit. The government will look at further targeted measures for personal support workers who do an essential service, helping the most vulnerable in our communities. Canada must better value their work and their contributions to our society. COVID-19 has disproportionately affected Canadians with disabilities and highlighted long-standing challenges. The government will bring forward a disability inclusion plan, which will have a new Canadian disability benefit modeled after the Guaranteed Income Supplement for seniors, a robust employment strategy for Canadians with disabilities, and a better process to determine eligibility for government disability programs and benefits.
Over the last 6 months, it has become clearer than ever why Canadians need a resilient healthcare system. The government will ensure that everyone, including in rural and remote areas, has access to a family doctor or primary care team. COVID-19 has also shown that our system needs to be more flexible and able to reach people at home. The government will continue to expand capacity to deliver virtual healthcare. The government will also continue to address the opioid epidemic tearing through communities, which is an ongoing and worsening public health crisis. Additionally, the government will further increase access to mental health resources. All Canadians should have the care they need when they need it. We will all be stronger for it. The same goes for access to the medicine that keeps people healthy. Many Canadians who had drug plans through work lost this coverage when they were laid off because of the pandemic. So this is exactly the right moment to ramp up efforts to address that. The government remains committed to a national universal pharmacare program and will accelerate steps to achieve this system, including through a rare disease strategy to help Canadian families save money on high-cost drugs, establishing a national formulary to keep drug prices low, and working with provinces and territories willing to move forward without delay. En plus d'une bonne infrastructure de santé,
in addition to good health infrastructure, Canadians also need strong, safe communities to call home. The government has banned assault-style firearms. The government will also continue implementing firearms policy commitments, including giving municipalities the ability to further restrict or ban handguns, and strengthening measures to control the flow of illegal guns into Canada. Women's safety must be the foundation on which all progress is built. The government will accelerate investments in shelters and transition housing and continue to advance with the National Action Plan on gender-based violence.
renforcer les communautés encore davantage.
To keep building strong communities, over the next 2 years, the government will also invest in all types of infrastructure, including public transit, energy-efficient retrofits, clean energy, rural broadband, and affordable housing, particularly for Indigenous peoples in northern communities. In the last 6 months, many more people have worked from home, done classes from the kitchen table, shopped online, and accessed government services remotely. So it's become more important than ever that all Canadians have access to the internet. The government will accelerate the connectivity timelines and ambitions of the Universal Broadband Fund to ensure that all Canadians, no matter where they live, have access to high-speed internet. And to further link our communities together, the government will work with partners to support regional routes for airlines. It is essential that Canadians have access to reliable and affordable regional air services. This is an issue of equity, of jobs, and of economic development. The government will work to support this.
Strong communities are places where everyone has a safe, affordable home. No one should be without a place to stay during a pandemic, and for that matter, a Canadian winter. This week, the government invested more than $1 billion for people experiencing homelessness, including for this fall. In 2017, the government announced that it would reduce chronic homelessness by 50%. The government has already helped more than 1 million people get a safe and affordable place to call home. Given the progress that has been made and our commitment to do more, the government is now focused on entirely eliminating chronic homelessness in Canada. At the same time, the government will also make substantial investment in housings for Canadians. The government will add to the historic National Housing Strategy announced in 2017 by increasing investment to rapid housing in the short term and partnering with not-for-profit and co-ops in the mid to long term. For the middle class, the government will also move forward with enhancement to the first-time home buyer incentive, including in Canada's largest cities, so family can afford to buy their first home. Tout le monde mérite d'avoir un toit au-dessus de la tête.
Housing is something everyone deserves, and it's also a key driver of the economy. Construction projects create jobs, and having a home is critical so people can contribute to their communities. Just like everyone deserves a home, everyone deserves to be able to put nutritious food on the table. The pandemic has made that harder for Canadians. The government will continue to work with partners, including directly with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Nation partners, to address food insecurity in Canada. The government will also strengthen local food supply chains here in Canada. The Canadian and migrant workers who produce, harvest, and process our food, the people picking the fruit to packaging seafood, have done an outstanding job getting good food on people's plates. They deserve the government's full support and protection. The government will also ensure that those in Canada's supply-managed sectors receive full and fair compensation for recent trade agreements. Farmers keep our families fed, and we will continue to help them succeed and grow.
Cette pandémie a révélé des lacunes dans les secteurs.
This pandemic has revealed gaps in health, housing, and food supply. It has also laid bare inequalities Canadians face in the workplace. We have an opportunity not just to support Canadians, but grow their potential. Working with the provinces and territories, the government will make the largest investment in Canadian history in training for workers. This will include by supporting Canadians as they build new skills in growing sectors, helping workers receive education and accreditation, and strengthening workers' futures by connecting them to employers and to good jobs in order to grow and strengthen the middle class.
Researchers developing vaccines to entrepreneurs building online stores. This pandemic has reminded us of the power of the knowledge economy and how vital it is for our future. Canadians are leading, and they should have government services that keep up. The government will make generational investments in updating outdated IT systems to modernize the way that government serves Canadians, from the elderly to the young, from people looking for work to those living with a disability. The government will also work to introduce free, automatic tax filing for simple returns to ensure citizens receive the benefits they need. Government must remain agile and ready for what lies ahead. Climate action will be a cornerstone of our plan to support and create 1 million jobs across the country. This is where the world is going. Global consumers and investors are demanding and rewarding climate action. Canadians have the determination and ingenuity to rise to this challenge and global market opportunity. We can create good jobs today and a globally competitive economy, not just next year, but in 2030, 2040, and beyond. Les Canadiens sont conscients que les changements climatiques menacent leur...
Canadians also know that climate change threatens our health, way of life, and planet. They want climate action now, and that is what the government will continue to deliver. The government will immediately bring forward a plan to exceed Canada's 2030 climate goal. The government will also legislate Canada's goal of net zero emissions by 2050. As part of its plan, the government will create thousands of jobs retrofitting homes and buildings, cutting energy costs for Canadian families and businesses, invest in reducing the impact of climate-related disasters like floods and wildfires to make communities safer and more resilient, help deliver more transit and active transit options, and to make zero-emissions vehicles more affordable while investing in more charging stations across the country. A good example of adapting to a carbon-neutral future is building zero-emissions vehicles and batteries. Canada has the resources, from nickel to copper, needed for these clean technologies. This, combined with Canadian expertise, is Canada's competitive edge.
Le gouvernement lancera un nouveau fonds pour...
The government will launch a new fund to attract investments in making zero-emissions products and cut the corporate tax rate in half for these companies to create jobs and to make Canada a world leader in clean technology. The government will ensure Canada is the most competitive jurisdiction in the world for clean technology companies. Additionally, the government will transform how we power our economy and communities by moving forward with the Clean Power Fund, including with projects like the Atlantic Loop that will connect surplus clean power to regions transitioning away from coal, and support investments in renewable energy and next-generation clean energy and technology solutions.
Canada cannot reach net zero without the know-how of the energy sector and the innovative ideas of all Canadians, including people in places like British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland and Labrador. The government will support manufacturing, natural resource, and energy sectors as they work to transform to meet a net zero future, creating good-paying and long-lasting jobs. And it will recognize farmers, foresters, and ranchers as key partners in the fight against climate change, supporting their efforts to reduce emissions and to build resilience. The government will continue its policy of putting a price on pollution while putting that money back in the pockets of Canadians. It cannot be free to pollute. This pandemic has reminded Canadians of the importance of nature. The government will work with municipalities as part of a new commitment to expand urban parks so that everyone has access to green space. This will be done while protecting a quarter of Canada's land and a quarter of Canada's oceans in 5 years, and using nature-based solutions to fight climate change, including by planting 2 billion trees. The government will ban harmful single-use plastics next year and ensure more plastic is recycled. And the government will also modernize Canada's Environmental Protection Act. When the Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration was closed by a previous government, Canada lost an important tool to manage its waters. The government will create a new Canada Water Agency to keep our water safe, clean, and well managed. The government will also identify opportunities to build more resilient water and irrigation infrastructure. At the same time, the government will look at continuing to grow Canada's ocean economy to create opportunities for fishers and coastal communities, while advancing reconciliation and conservation objectives. Investing in the blue economy will help Canada prosper. Nous menons ce combat pour les Canadiens d'aujourd'hui et le Canada de...
This is a fight for Canadians today and Canada tomorrow. We must never forget the values that make us who we are. The fourth and final foundation of the government's approach is defending Canadian values and ensuring that they are lived experiences for everyone. Canada is a place where we take care of each other. This has helped Canada weather the pandemic better than many other countries. Canada must continue to stand up for the values that define this country, whether that's welcoming newcomers, celebrating with pride the contributions of LGBTQ communities, or embracing 2 official languages. There is work to be done, including on the road of reconciliation and in addressing systemic racism. Throughout the pandemic, the government has made it a priority to support Indigenous communities, which has helped contain the spread of COVID-19 and kept people safe. That is something the government will continue to do.
Shared path of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and remain focused on implementing the commitments made in 2019. However, the pandemic has shown that we need to keep moving forward even faster on a number of fronts, including by expediting work to co-develop distinction-based Indigenous health legislation with First Nations, Inuit, and the Métis Nation, and a distinction-based mental health and wellness strategy. By accelerating work on the National Action Plan in response to the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, calls for justice, as well as implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. And by continuing to close the infrastructure gap in Indigenous community, working on a distinction basis with First Nations, Inuit, and the Métis Nation to accelerate the government's 10-year commitment. The government will also make additional resiliency investment to meet the clean drinking water commitment in First Nations community and support additional capacity building for First Nations, Inuit, and the Métis Nation. The government will also move forward to introduce legislation to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples before the end of this year. Pour trop de Canadiens, le racisme.
For too many Canadians, systemic racism is a lived reality. We know that racism didn't take a pause during the pandemic. On the contrary, COVID-19 has hit racialized Canadians especially hard. Many people, especially Indigenous people and Black and racialized Canadians, have raised their voices and stood up to demand change. They are telling us we must do more. The government agrees. The government pledged to address systemic racism and committed to do so in a way informed by the lived experiences of racialized communities and Indigenous peoples.
In economic empowerment through the Black Entrepreneurship Program, while working to close the gaps in services for Indigenous communities. Important steps were taken with the release of Canada's anti-racism strategy for 2019 to 2022, the creation of an anti-racism secretariat, and the appointment of the first ever minister focused specifically on diversity and inclusion. This is all good, but much more needs to be done for permanent, transformative change to take place. The government will redouble its effort by taking action on online hate, going further on economic empowerment for specific communities, and increasing diversity on procurement, building a whole of federal government approach around better collection of disaggregated data, implementing an action plan to increase representation in hiring and appointments, and leadership development within the public service. And by taking new steps to support the artistic and economic contributions of Black Canadian culture and heritage. Progress must also be made through the policing and justice systems. All Canadians must have the confidence that the justice system is there to protect them, not to harm them. Black Canadians and Indigenous peoples are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. That has to change. The government will take steps to ensure that a strong hand of criminal justice is used where it is needed to keep people safe, but not where it would be discriminatory or counterproductive. The government will introduce legislation and make investments that take action to address the systemic inequities in all phases of the criminal justice system, from diversion to sentencing, from rehabilitation to records. The government will move forward on enhanced civilian oversight of our law enforcement agencies, including the RCMP. It will modernize training for police and law enforcement, including addressing standards around the use of force. It will move forward on RCMP reforms with a shift toward community-led policing. and it will accelerate work to co-develop a legislative framework for First Nations policing as an essential service. Nos deux langues.
Our two official languages are woven into the fabric of our country. The defense of the rights of Francophones outside Quebec and the defense of the rights of the Anglophone minority within Quebec are a priority for the government. The Government of Canada must also recognize that the situation of French is unique. There are almost 8 million Francophones in Canada within a region of over 360 million inhabitants who are almost exclusively Anglophone. The government therefore has the responsibility to protect and promote French not only outside of Quebec but also within Quebec. In this vein, 51 years after the passage of the Official Languages Act, the government is committed to strengthening this legislation, among other things, taking into consideration the unique reality of French.
Immigration remains a driver of Canada's economic growth. With other countries rejecting global talent that could help their economy, Canada has an opportunity, as we recover, to become the world's top destination for talent, capital, and jobs. When people choose Canada, help build Canada, and make sacrifices in support of Canada, we should make it easier for them to formally become Canadians. Earlier this year, the government announced measures to grant permanent residency to people who, although not Canadian citizens, had cared for the most vulnerable in long-term care homes and other medical facilities. The government will continue to bring in newcomers and support family reunification. We know that there is an economic and human advantage to having families together. As part of both the short-term economic recovery and of a long-term plan for growth, the government will leverage the advantage we have on immigration to keep Canada competitive on the world stage. Nous devons donner suite.
We must take action on all of these priorities at home, but we must also address the world in which we live. COVID-19 has accelerated the existing trends toward a more fragmented global order. It remains in Canada's interest to create and maintain bilateral and multilateral relationships to advance peace and economic prosperity. The government will invest more in international development while supporting developing countries on their economic recoveries and resilience. Canada will also support work to ensure that people around the world have access to a vaccine. We cannot eliminate this pandemic in Canada unless we end it everywhere.
Continue to stand up for human rights and the rule of law. It is unacceptable that any citizen be arbitrarily detained. Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor must be brought home. This is something for which all Canadians stand united. The government will continue to fight for free trade, including by leading the Ottawa Group to reform the World Trade Organization. Our like-minded allies and partners are investing to make sure their societies emerge stronger. This government's plan does that as well. Taken together, this is an ambitious plan for an unprecedented reality. The course of events will determine what needs to be done when. But throughout, protecting and supporting Canadians will stay the top priority. And the core values that have driven the government since day one will remain the same. In 2015, Canadians asked their government to deliver real change on everything from middle-class jobs to climate change. In 2019, the people chose a parliament that would keep moving forward on these shared goals. And in 2020, Canadians expect nothing less. It is no small task to build a stronger, more resilient country. It will take hard work. It will require a commitment to finding common ground. Mesdames et messieurs, les
parliamentarians, Canadians have placed a trust in you to guide this country forward. They have placed their faith in you to work together to meet whatever challenges we face. Remember that we're here today because of the generations of Canadians who came before us. We're here because of the men and women, our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, who had the courage to reach for a better future. Today, it's our turn, our moment to build a stronger and more resilient Canada for everyone.
Mesdames et Messieurs les députés,
Members of the House of Commons, you will be asked to appropriate the funds to carry out the services and expenditures authorized by Parliament. Members of the Senate and members of the House of Commons, may you be equal to the profound trust bestowed on you by Canadians, and may divine providence guide you in all your duties.
Order. À l'ordre. I wish to inform the House that in accordance with the representation made by the government under the provisions of Standing Order 55-1, I have caused to be published a special order paper giving notice of 2 government bills. Je dépose donc sur le bureau du...
I now lay upon the table the relevant document.
Monsieur Trudeau, appuyé...
Mr. Trudeau, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez, moves for leave to introduce a bill respecting the administration of oaths of office.
Adopted. Monsieur Trudeau, appuyé par Monsieur Rodriguez.
Mr. Trudeau, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez, moves that the bill now be read a first time. This motion is deemed adopted.
This bill, première lecture de ce projet de loi.
J'ai l'honneur de faire connaître à la Chambre que...
I have the honor to inform the House that when this House did attend Her Excellency the Governor-General this day in the Senate chamber, Her Excellency was pleased to make a speech to both Houses of Parliament, and to prevent mistakes, I have obtained a copy which is as follows.
Agreed? Agreed. Okay, there we go. I'll give you that, and I'll give you that as well. Okay. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Leader of the Government of the House of Commons, that the speech of Her Excellency, delivered this day from the throne to both Houses of Parliament, be taken into consideration later this day.
Mr. Trudeau, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez, moves that the speech of Her Excellency, delivered this day from the throne to both House of Parliament, be now taken into consideration later this day. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Yes. Carried? Carried. Call it. Oh, carried. Good. From Bourassa.
President of the Treasury Board.
Oh. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House study the measures before it at the next sitting of the House.
Par Monsieur Blair, propose que la Chambre étudie les travaux des subsides à sa prochaine séance. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Yes. Carried? Carried. It is my duty to inform the House that pursuant to order made Monday, April 20th, 2020, a total of 9 days will be allotted for the supply period ending December 10th, 2020. Je suis maintenant prêt à proposer pour...
I'm now prepared to propose for the ratification of the House a candidate for the position of Assistant Deputy Speaker and Deputy Chair of Committees of the Whole.
Order 8, I propose Mrs. Hughes for the position of Assistant Deputy Speaker and Deputy Chair of Committee of the Whole. The motion is deemed moved and seconded. The one that scratched it? Okay. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and carried. Je suis maintenant prêt à proposer pour l'adoption de la charte.
I'm now prepared to propose for the ratification of the House a candidate for the position of Assistant Deputy Speaker and Assistant Deputy Chair of Committees of the Whole. Pursuant to Standing Order 8, I propose Ms. Mendez for the position of Assistant Deputy Speaker and Assistant Deputy Chair of Committees of the Whole.
Moved and seconded. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed and carried. In light of the special order that was agreed to by the House earlier today, I would like to take this opportunity to share some information on the process for taking of recorded division that members may find useful. As we learn to adapt to constraints brought about by COVID-19 pandemic, it is clear that while many of the House's rules and practices can be adapted to allow for the remote participation of members, votes appear to require a departure from established practice. At the request of each of the parties, the House administration conducted a simulation and, following comments received on the occasion, made a number of adjustments. Certaines de nos règles et pratiques, comme celles
applying certain rules and practices, such as ensuring that members hear the question and remain present until the result is announced, have proven to be challenging when used through virtual means. In addition, while every effort has been made to create a reliable and robust system and internet connectivity issues beyond the control of the member or House administration can occur.
When a member is unable to join the video conference call in time for technical reasons, hears the question through other means such as CPAC or online webcasting, and is ultimately able to vote when his or her name is called. In such instances, the chair has no way of determining if a member did indeed hear the question and would have great difficulty refusing a member's fundamental right to cast his or her vote. À l'opposé,
in other instances, other members joining in virtually late after encountering technical difficulties would indicate that they did not hear the question and abstain from voting. Either affirmation would be accepted by the chair in keeping with the convention that the House accepts as true the word of the member.
La présidence doit donc ménager un juste équilibre entre l'intégrité.
In an effort to strike a proper balance between the integrity and decision-making process and the participation of all members who wish to vote, and unless further decisions are taken by the House, the chair proposes, therefore, that votes proceed as follows.
When a question is put and a voice vote follows, we will not proceed with calling yeas and nays, nor have the 5 members required to ask that a recorded division take place. Instead, I will follow the normal process of reading the motion and ask if it is the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion. At that point, any one representative from a recognized party present in the chamber may request a recorded division. I will then call the members or defer the vote as the case may be. Tous les députés pourront être admis.
All members will be admitted to the sitting by video conference at any given time, knowing that the table will have the list of members who were in attendance or connected to the video conference when the whips took their seat or take their seat. Members on the list will then be called in alphabetical order by party to indicate how they are voting. I will intervene if we cannot see the member.
All the names on the list have been called. I will invite members whose names were missed or who encountered technical difficulties to identify themselves using the raised hand feature. By then, IT ambassadors will have provided the table a list of members who encountered difficulties and contacted the support team for assistance. And cameras must remain on during the duration of the vote. Il est possible Il est possible qu'un député
It is possible that some members will be unable to connect and vote. In reading the special order, they would not be counted unless measures are taken to allow them to communicate with the table before the end of the vote. I invite the representatives of the parties to carefully consider and perhaps provide some guidance to the Speaker on how best to address this issue.
Quorum is certainly a challenge. I would ask the members uphold the dignity of the House when voting or participating in proceedings, including being judicious in the backgrounds they choose and how they dress. In preparation for remote votes, members are invited to take part in a simulation of the voting process tomorrow, Thursday, September 24th at 7 p.m. Je remercie les députés de leur attention.
I want to thank members for their attention to this somewhat prosaic statement as we navigate our new reality together. I believe it is important for us to acknowledge that the ongoing pandemic has altered the way we fulfill our role as members of Parliament. It is, however, equally important to take heart in the fact that we are adapting to those changes and that our shared goal remains the same: to serve the people of Canada.
Switch over.
Orders of the day. Ordre du jour.
Ordre émanant du gouvernement, prise en considération.
Government orders.
L'honorable député de Bourassa.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to speak following the throne speech. The government is preparing the way for a bold and robust solution to the pandemic, but I would like to thank those people who've been on the front lines and worked so hard to save the most vulnerable Canadians. This measure is so important for me because many people in my riding have worked on the front lines, and many of them are from my community of origin. I'd like to salute their sense of duty, their compassion, their courage. And I'm thinking about those people who are working in the shadows, who get up every day and sometimes pay the price. My thoughts go out to all Canadians who have lost a loved one recently and who are experiencing difficult times. On behalf of our government, I extend our sincerest condolences to you and your families. I salute all the people of Bourassa, who I have the privilege to represent here in the House. Like us, they too are fighting the pandemic. I salute the organizations, the volunteers, the businesses, the companies, without forgetting elected officials for all of their efforts. We need to continue to be vigilant and to respect guidelines. I don't need to remind anyone, Mr. Speaker, we all know that our reality has changed. We went through difficult times, and now the second wave is ahead of us. Allow me to paint a picture of the situation we're facing. More than 9,000 Canadians have died of COVID-19. In the United States, over 200,000 people have died, and we're looking at almost 1 million worldwide. Many Canadians have lost their jobs, and some have started to work, but still millions of Canadians remain unemployed. Some segments of the population are more vulnerable, and the pandemic has hit Many people, mothers, women who are often facing a choice of their family, caring for their families or working. Others, people who are vulnerable, living in fear and isolation. Low-wage earners who are in care facilities, working in grocery stores and in the service industry as well. The pandemic has affected us all, and in recent months, our government has been there for Canadians. The Canadian emergency measures for Canadians and students were put in place to quickly assist Canadians who had lost their jobs. Recently, we announced that beneficiaries would be moved to EI in order to facilitate relaunching the economy. The benefit will enable Canadians who can work, or who cannot work rather because they are ill, or who must isolate for reasons relating to COVID-19, to receive this benefit during isolation. And these measures should be put in place within the next 2 weeks.
We've also helped companies get through the crisis. Our goal is to avoid layoffs and to encourage businesses to rehire their workers and to create new jobs. To this end, we established the emergency wage subsidy, and we've boosted the amount along the way to meet the needs of businesses. And finally, our government was there to support agriculture, agri-food, culture, heritage, sports, tourism, and other industries. We were also there for the provinces in this crisis in many ways. Our government ensured that sufficient personal protection equipment was obtained, while at the same time boosting Canadian production capacity. We also developed an alert, a COVID app, which is yet one more tool to fight the pandemic. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the residents of Ontario, Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan to download the app and to use it. Everyone can do their part. And we invite the other provinces to follow suit. We also ensured access to vaccine candidates and therapeutic treatments, and are also working on their development here in Canada. The Canadian forces have been deployed to long-term care facilities to regain control of the situation in some places. And with our $19 billion stimulus fund, we agreed with the provinces in order to contribute to their efforts to strengthen the healthcare system's capacity and increase the supply of PPE. The government also invested $2 billion in a fund to promote a safe return to school. All things told, Mr. Speaker, our government did not hesitate to take action to be there for Canadians, for businesses, and for the provinces and territories to protect the health and safety of all Canadians. But we're not done. We still have a lot to do, Mr. Speaker. Our government is moving ahead on 4 priorities. The first priority is clearly to protect Canadians' health. We have to continue to increase tracing and testing all across the country. All Canadians need access, rapid access, to testing and tracing. And to that end, we have set up an intervention team for testing in order to swiftly respond to this need, particularly in remote and isolated areas. We will also continue to work on providing Canadians the protection equipment they need. We will keep Canadians safe, and we will thereby create jobs for businesses that that did have to close their doors during the lockdown, we will be there to help them financially. We will continue our efforts to come up with a vaccine and therapeutic treatments, because in the long term, that is how we are going to get out of this pandemic. The second part of the government's plan is to continue to support Canadians and companies. We will continue doing what's working well. So the emergency wage subsidy will be extended until next summer, and we will continue to work with companies to ensure that the subsidy meets their needs. The Emergency Fund for Canadian Companies and the loan program and various other industry-targeted measures will continue to be in place for travel and tourism, for hospitality, for cultural industries like theaters. For young people, we will significantly strengthen the youth skills and employment strategy so that next summer, more young people will be able to gain paid job experience. We also believe that Canadians need to work together to remove the last obstacles to free trade between provinces. We want to create 1 million jobs to get back to the pre-pandemic employment levels. We will increase investments in infrastructure and the social economy. We will provide assistance to workers so that they can acquire new skills and get back to work. And we will be taking steps to help employers to hire and retain their employees. Mr. Speaker, women have been particularly hard hit in this pandemic. That's why our government will be moving ahead with an action plan for women in the economy in order to help more women get back into the labor market. Based on the Quebec model, our government will be making significant investments over the long term in childcare all across the country. We will also be there for parents and families. We will be subsidizing programs for preschool, before school and after school. We will also be coming up with new ways of dealing with income inequality. We will be limiting tax breaks for stock options, and this will help make it more difficult for the web giants to avoid paying their share of taxes. And we need to look to the future as well, Mr. Speaker, in order to get started better. The pandemic has revealed a number of weaknesses in our society. The fate of seniors was one of the dramatic situations revealed in recent months. Together with the provinces and territories, we will do everything we can to support seniors. First off, we will be making changes to the criminal code to make it clear that people who neglect or endanger seniors that will be punished for neglecting those in their care. We will take steps for long-term care. We will take steps to help people stay at home. And we will come up with various ways of helping personal support workers. We are also still determined to increase the old age security. We will do everything necessary, Mr. Speaker, so that our seniors live in safety, in respect, and with dignity. Canadians with disabilities have also been affected adversely. In order to strengthen our social safety net, we have come up with a new benefit for people with disabilities. We will be paving the way for a universal national pharmacare system. And it will focus on rare diseases, and we will work with the provinces and territories that would like to move forward more quickly on this. We will also be investing in public transit, in energy efficiency, clean energies, and affordable housing. We will also be making major investments in services to rural areas because in recent months we've seen just how important it is for Canadians to have internet access. We will be increasing our ambitions when it comes to broadband access so that all Canadians have access to high-speed internet. Our government will also help ensure that people in supply-managed industries are properly compensated for losses due to recent trade deals. This is a central piece in our reconstruction and our goal to recreate 1 million jobs, to create 1 million new jobs in Canada. We will also be passing legislation when it comes to being carbon neutral by 2015 and meeting our climate change goals by 2030. We will be creating a new fund to attract investment in zero emissions manufacturing. We will cut the tax rate by 50% for companies that are engaging in carbon neutral manufacturing. Fourth, everything we do as a government will be done consistently with Canadian values and with a view to ensuring that everyone benefits. We have to pay particular attention to the situation of French in Canada, defending the rights of French speakers outside Quebec and the Anglophone minority in Quebec are priorities for our government. Furthermore, we have to recognize that there's still work to be done around reconciliation and combating systemic racism. We acknowledge that. First, we will be increasing the pace of work around responding to calls for justice in terms of the missing and murdered Indigenous women inquiry. And we will also be moving ahead still with peace and reconciliation. We will be working with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis to deal with health issues and a mental health and well-being strategy. Finally, we are actively working on bridging the gap when it comes to infrastructure for Indigenous communities. We will be tabling legislation to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People by the end of this year. Mr. Speaker, systemic racism is a sad reality that affects many Canadians, and I know what I'm talking about. Our government will therefore be addressing that situation. We'll be fighting online hate and efforts to promote empowerment for targeted communities and improve their access to the labor market. We will have a government approach to better collection of disaggregated data. We will try to increase participation through recruitment and appointments and leadership development programs within the public service. And we will be taking new steps to support the arts, culture, and as it involves Black Canadians. We will also be taking other steps to fight inequalities in the justice system. We will be strengthening, we will be modernizing our police forces, including the RCMP and other law enforcement officers. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that our government has today announced in the throne speech other steps to support Canadians' health and safety in the context of a global pandemic. We will be there to protect Canadians' health, their jobs, and to ensure their safety. Yes, I am proud of our government. We will always be there for our seniors, our young people, our families, the most vulnerable, to help them get through these hard times. Mr. Speaker, I propose, seconded by the honourable member for Davenport, that the following address be presented to Her Excellency the Governor-General of Canada. To Her Excellency the Right Honourable Julie Payette, Chancellor and Companion of the Order of Canada, Chancellor and Commander of the Order of Military Merit, Chancellor and Commander of the Police Forces, Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada. May it please Her Excellency, we, your loyal subjects, the House of Commons of Canada, assembled in Parliament, respectfully request that Her Excellency accept our thanks for the excellent speech addressed to both chambers of Parliament. Thank you.
Monsieur Dubourg, appuyé.
Mr. Dubourg, seconded by Ms. Zerowitz, moves that the following address, be made to the Governor-General.
Chancellor and Principal Companion of the Order of Canada, Chancellor and Commander of the Order of Military Merit, Chancellor and Commander of the Order of Merit of the Police Forces, Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada. May it please Your Excellency. Le sujet très dévoué et fidèle.
To Her Excellency the Right Honourable Julie Payette, Chancellor and Principal Companion of the Order of Canada, Chancellor and Commander of the Order of Military Merit, Chancellor and Commander of the Order of Merit of the Police Forces, Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada. May it please Your Excellency, we, Her Majesty's most loyal and dutiful subjects, beg leave to offer our humble thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let me just start by saying it is great to be here today and to see Parliament back and us back in Ottawa getting to work. As we expected, the speech today had a lot of good lines and platitudes in it, but as we speak, there are literally thousands of Canadians in line across this country or being turned away because Health Canada has no plan and no timeline when it comes to reviewing rapid testing options for us here across the country. Meanwhile, our allies are making good progress on it. In the United Kingdom, for example, they have a home testing option that's been available for months. In Germany, and their medical experts are months ahead in terms of approvals on more testing options. And the federal government should have known this by now. Their own co-chair of the Immunity Task Force, Dr. David Naylor, has said, it is suboptimal for Canada to be heading into the fall without a suite of rapid test options and without clarity about the use of tests other than nasal swabs. And today in Huntsville, the Premier of Ontario, Premier Ford, said this about Health Canada. Health Canada, we need your help. I can't stress it enough. I am just hearing crickets from Health Canada on the saliva test. These tests make it easier to get people tested, especially children. Mr. Speaker, to the thousands of Canadians that are frustrated about the testing process, including some of our premiers, my question to the honourable member from Barassa is, can he advise the parents and children and people across this country of a specific date and a specific timeline that we can expect the government to ensure a full review process happens as fast as possible to help provinces and to help Canadians?
The honourable member for Bourassa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. He was here watching the throne speech and the topic he raises is health. Mr. Speaker, we've done a heck of a lot to support Canadians all across the country. Recently, the COVID Alert app was put in place. Many provinces have taken it up. We invested money in supporting the provinces as well, a $19 billion fund to support the provinces and territories. That's unprecedented funding that we have transferred to the provinces so that they can help Canadians and seniors out with these various measures. Tracing and testing, Mr. Speaker, all those measures, including personal protection equipment, we have taken steps to ensure that Canada has everything it needs to get through this pandemic.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, I have a special thought for all those who have been hard hit by COVID-19 and those who will be, because we have to learn from this health crisis. One of those lessons is that it's not half measures and interference by the federal government. The member for Bourassa is a member from Quebec. We need sustainable measures and sustainable investments. One of the lessons is that we weren't ready. My grandmother said, measure twice, cut once. So we have to think it ahead. They did not respect the agreement to invest 50% or 55% in transfers and health care funding. Mr. Speaker, my colleague from Bourassa must rise in the House and tell us if he will vote with the Quebec National Assembly, which unanimously asked for $28 billion in catch-up funding and indexation for healthcare fundings. Will he vote with all Quebecers and the provinces? He is a Quebec MP. The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I also want to thank my colleague opposite for the question. In the question, the member opposite is suggesting sustainable measures. Well, we have just tabled the throne speech, and this is what sets out the vision for the next or the coming years. What more does he want in terms of sustainable measures? We're talking about health care, economic priorities and rebuilding, but also values. It's true, I am a member from Quebec, and I am proud to be a Quebecer and a Canadian. But in the government, we are taking all the measures necessary to help Quebec, but the Prime Minister is working with all the provincial and territorial premiers to put forward measures that will help everyone. And this is being done increasingly throughout this pandemic. The Prime Minister has had many conversations with the provincial and territorial premiers, and it's continuing. We must continue to negotiate, but always in the interest, the best interest of Canadians. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The federal government has failed Inuit before COVID-19 and continues to do so. Since this Liberal government has been in power in 2017, they have talked about a distinctive Indigenous housing strategy. In 2019, investing in more housing. We have yet to see these two items come into full action. Last month, I traveled to 7 Nunavut communities, visiting over 100 homes. All homes I went to had mold. Most of them were overcrowded. I also heard parents losing their children to the foster care system because their home was deemed unfit. I have heard stories of parents finding their children hanging from the ceiling. I have heard stories of elders forced to live with people that abuse them. The lack of basic human rights for Indigenous peoples results in death. Inuit are dying and have been before this pandemic. I did not have expectations of this throne speech, Mr. Speaker, because since the day I was born, Inuit have heard promises of a good life, of positivity, of being able to contribute it to society in a healthy way, to have basic human rights, and we continue to have those promises broken to us. I will start to have faith in the federal government, Mr. Speaker, once I see Inuit have the opportunity to live a life filled with dignity and respect. I will start to have faith in this institution once I see Indigenous people have the right to self-determination, Mr. Speaker. When will this federal government stand for Inuit and provide at least basic human rights, at least basic housing? Matna. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you and my colleague for her question. It's very moving, in fact. And I would invite my colleague to work with the government in order to continue to bring forward measures that will help the Indigenous communities. I also want to tell my colleague that in the speech that I just gave, I said that there were a number of measures that we were going to implement regarding calls for justice under the National Action Plan for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. Mr. Speaker, there are many things that need to be done, be it in healthcare, as she indicated, in housing, but it is together, by working together, that we will manage to improve the situation and the future for all Indigenous communities, and if the groups that are marginal and for marginalized groups. Thank you.
Comments. The Honourable Member for Surrey Newton.
I would like to thank the Honourable Member from Bourassa for his passionate speech and his hard work. Mr. Speaker, as my constituents know that I've been the small business person in this community of Surrey Newton for many years, and there are thousands more that were able to take the advantage of the wage subsidy that was provided. Mr. Speaker, through you, my question to the Honourable Member, how does this extension of wage subsidy will help thousands of small businesses in Bourassa, in Surrey Newton, and businesses across Canada?
Member for Bourassa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I say thank you also to my colleague, and I'm really pleased to answer his question. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, in the budget, in the second one, we talk about the economy, and the measures that we will take will be to create 1 million jobs. These will be created across the country. Furthermore, we have said, as the member mentioned, there is the emergency wage subsidy, which will be extended until next summer, Mr. Speaker, because this subsidy has been shown to work. We have seen that companies have had a number of difficulties, and they continue to experience difficulties throughout the pandemic. And we said that we would be there. We have been there. We are still here, and we will continue to be here to help these companies to create jobs, to maintain their operations, but also to continue in the agri-food industry, for example, to continue to have food and put food on the table every day. We will continue to help companies get through this pandemic. Thank you.
Going to take some discretion to just take one more question. I think giving members a little bit of latitude here this afternoon for speech from the throne. We'll take one more question. The Honourable Member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is nice to be back in this place, but of course respecting social distancing. I was honoured to be named the Shadow Minister for Women and Gender Equality. I plan to draw on my experience in this role to showcase that women can see themselves in this party. Women have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic, and we heard platitudes time and time again from this government with very little action. Women and Canadians deserve action, and they deserved it on day one. What do you have to say to the women and Canadians who have fallen through the cracks and have not received the support they so desperately needed?
The Honourable Member for Bourassa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her question. And it also affects her personally, Mr. Speaker. It is indicated in the throne speech the extent to which women have been affected by this pandemic. We have taken a number of measures that will benefit women, be it with the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit or others. In the throne speech, we also indicated that we would put forward a special plan to help women in terms of businesses, allow women to have better opportunities on the labour market, and we will continue to move forward. Thank you very much. The Honourable Member for
Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the very proud member of Parliament for Davenport, it is an absolute honour for me to rise in this chamber today and to second the motion of my colleague, the member for Bourassa, regarding the address in reply to the speech from the throne. As members of Parliament, we are gathered at a time of great uncertainty and anxiety. We are living in a world that is gripped by the greatest public health care crisis of our lifetime. It is a global pandemic that has changed history, and our country has not been immune to the consequences. When it began, Canadians were justifiably worried about their own health and the health of the people that they love. They were anxious about the economic fallout, whether they would keep their job, and how they would pay the bills if that did happen. And just a few months ago, months that somehow seemed like years now, everyone knew that the spring of 2020 would be one they would never forget. And no one knew when the COVID-19 pandemic would finally end. Of course, it has not ended, and we must all come to terms with the fact that this crisis is not over. There are more challenges for all of us to endure, and there is an ever-present need for us to continue to work together. But Canadians have shown that when faced with the crisis, they can rise to the challenges that face them. I believe that they have done that this year, and I'm confident that they will continue to do that, together, united as one people. But as Canadians have done their part, so must we as parliamentarians. The people we all represent need their governments and their parliamentarians from all political parties to also rise to the occasion. They need their political representatives to lead. Today, Mr. Speaker, our government has come forward with a speech from the throne that does just that. We have before us a roadmap that provides leadership. There is leadership on how to fight the pandemic and save lives. There is leadership to support Canadian workers and businesses. And there is more leadership to build back our country's economy, strengthen the middle class, and invest in critical infrastructure such as public transit and rural broadband. Mr. Speaker, there are many critical social services on which Canadians urgently need action from their governments. Childcare, long-term care for seniors, pharmacare, and affordable housing. We are providing action and leadership in each of these areas. The throne speech also provides leadership to strengthen our core identity as a tolerant nation, with a commitment to fight discrimination, stand up for gender equality, and continue on the road to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And of course, we are providing leadership on what we all know to be the critical challenge of our time, climate change. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a comprehensive and bold throne speech, fit for the times in which we live. There are many highlights in the speech. I will do my best to draw your attention to them in the limited time that I have here today. Of course, our first priority is and will continue to be to protect Canadians from COVID-19. This has been our goal from the start, to work relentlessly and nonstop with governments across the country at all levels and with all Canadians to beat this virus. I'm glad to say that Canadians have done their part. They have understood the need to stay at home. They know and practice social distancing when they're not at home, and they know the value of wearing masks to help prevent getting COVID-19, and if they have it, to help prevent spreading it to others by staying at home. Over the past several months, personal protective equipment, or PPE, has been shipped across the country. Many of the members of our Canadian forces were there in long-term care homes to help our seniors. And throughout it all, Canadians have looked after each other in each of our communities from coast to coast to coast. And we are committed to continuing to look after each other as Canadians. In the pandemic's first wave, testing for the virus and contact tracing were ramped up across the country. And as we have seen far too much in too many news sources across the country just this week, with all the many outbreaks, there is an enormous need for us to do even more. Our federal government will help the provinces increase their ability to test Canadians so that the long waiting lines that are now occurring can be reduced. As well, we are pursuing every technology possible for faster tests. Mr. Speaker, we have heard loud and clear, not only from the opposition, but from Canadians, that everybody's looking for rapid tests to be approved. And as soon as they are approved by Health Canada for safe use in this country, our government is committed to doing everything we can to see them deployed as quickly as possible. Throughout this pandemic, our local public health authorities have been on the front lines, providing expert and authoritative advice and action. They have the best view on what is happening locally. And as we move forward to prevent local outbreaks from becoming larger, it might be necessary for communities to enact short-term closure orders. If that happens, our government will provide targeted financial help directly to local businesses. We have already invested $19 billion for a safe restart agreement with provinces and territories to help support in such areas such as healthcare and purchasing PPEs. And just recently, we announced a further $2 billion to help with the reopening of schools, to help keep our students and their teachers and everybody that works within the school system safe. But, Mr. Speaker, as the throne speech notes, in the long run, the best way to end this pandemic is with a safe and effective vaccine. As such, our government has already secured access to potential vaccines. And we continue to look at all the options, and we are devising a plan to distribute a vaccine once it is ready. Now, in addition to protecting the health of Canadians, we're also committed to protecting their livelihood. As we all know, this pandemic has hit the Canadian economy hard. Almost overnight, many Canadians found themselves out of work. Our government responded boldly and quickly with programs such as the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, also known as CERB, and the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, known as CEWS. As we move forward, there's so much more work to do because Canadians need jobs that they can rely on. To make that happen, we will launch a campaign to create over 1 million jobs, restoring employment to previous levels prior to COVID-19. We will use a number of different tools to accomplish this, including direct investments in the social sector and infrastructure, skills training for workers, and incentives for employers to hire and retrain workers. We will also extend the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy right through to next summer. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, the wage subsidy has been an absolute lifeline for businesses across this country and for our economy. We are committed to working with businesses and labor in the months ahead to ensure that this program continues to meet the evolving needs of Canadians. In addition to this, we will assist businesses by expanding the Canada Emergency Business Act, which is our loan program, to help them, or small businesses, with their fixed costs. As well, we know that there needs to be further support to hard-hit industries such as travel and tourism, hospitality, and the cultural industries like the performing arts. I believe the Canada Emergency Response Benefit has helped many Canadians at exactly the time they needed to pay their bills. But as the throne speech points out, with the economic restart now underway, CERB recipients should instead be supported by the employment insurance system. And so for people who would not traditionally qualify for EI, we will create the Transitional Canada Recovery Benefit. In the coming months, the EI system will become the sole way to distribute employment benefits. And this includes for Canadians who traditionally have not been able to qualify for EI in the past. And that includes our gig workers, our short-term contract workers as well. Mr. Speaker, we have been very clear that we have seen very clearly that the economic impact of this crisis has been particularly hard on low-income women. Many women have worked bravely on the front lines or have shouldered the responsibility of unpaid care work at home. We cannot let this pandemic roll back the clock on women's participation in the workforce. As such, we will create an action plan for women in the economy to help more women get back into the workforce. This pandemic has further exposed a critical truth that many of us have long known to be evident. Canada needs more accessible and affordable, high-quality childcare. Our government recognizes this, and we are committed to making a significant, long-term, sustained investment to create a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. Mr. Speaker, this will be a game changer, not only in terms of maximizing participation of all Canadians in our workforce, but it will be a game changer for growth in our economy. As we make these investments, our government's approach will be guided by values of fiscal sustainability and prudence. Our plan for stimulus and recovery will be responsible. And in the longer term, we will focus on strengthening the middle class and generating economic growth. We will also look for ways to generate revenue by taxing extreme wealth inequity. That includes limiting the stock option deduction for wealthy individuals at large established corporations and dealing with corporate tax avoidance by digital corporate giants. Mr. Speaker, as we look back at the lessons we have learned in the last 6 months, one is that we have sadly let down our seniors in long-term care homes, where too many have died from COVID-19. Our elders deserve to be safe and to live in dignity. The tragedy of recent months cannot be repeated. Long-term care falls under provincial and territorial jurisdiction, but our federal government intends to take action. We will work with Parliament on criminal code amendments to explicitly penalize those who neglect seniors under their care. We will also work with the provinces and territories to set new national standards for long-term care. We need to better take care of our seniors, and these two measures will go a long way to helping us do so. This unprecedented pandemic has also disproportionately affected Canadians with disabilities. We will bring forward a number of measures to support our disabled community, including a disability inclusion plan, which includes a new Canadian disability benefit modeled after the guaranteed income supplement for seniors. We will also introduce a robust employment strategy for Canadians with disabilities and a better process to determine eligibility for government disability programs and benefits. Mr. Speaker, there has been another pandemic underway across Canada. It's been around for a number of years, but it's been accelerated during COVID, and that is the opioid crisis. It has been ravaging our communities and has created a worsening public health care crisis. We will continue to take action to address this crisis. And we strongly believe We will also continue to increase access to an area that's been underinvested for too many years, which is mental health. We will increase access to mental health resources in our country. And finally, we strongly believe that it is the right time to ramp up our efforts to ensure Canadians get the pharmaceutical medicines they need. Our government continues to be committed to a national universal pharmacare program, and we will take action to make sure that this happens. This means working with provinces and territories willing to move forward without delay and establishing a national formulary to keep drug prices low. Mr. Speaker, Canadians have a right to live in safe communities. Our government has banned assault-style firearms. We will continue to implement our promises in this area. We will give municipalities the ability to further restrict or ban handguns, and we will strengthen measures to stop guns from illegally entering Canada. We must also work to ensure the safety of women in our communities. As part of that, we will accelerate investments in shelters and transition housing and move forward with a national action plan on gender-based violence. Mr. Speaker, in recent years, our federal government has stepped up to take action on affordable housing. Already, we have helped more than 1 million Canadians get a safe and affordable place to call home. And now we will add to our national housing strategy in 2017 by increasing investments in rapid housing and partnering with not-for-profits and co-ops. I'm also very proud of our commitment to eliminate chronic homelessness in Canada. This, to me, is one of the most ambitious and aggressive targets ever made around affordable housing by a national government. And as we look to the future, we must not take our eye off the immense challenge that face us, our children, and our grandchildren, climate change. We must continue to take action now to confront this threat to our planet. We do this to protect our way of life and to create new jobs. The speech from the throne is clear. Our government will bring forward a plan to exceed Canada's 2030 climate goal, and we will legislate Canada's goal of net zero emissions by 2050. As part of this plan, we will create new jobs, retrofitting homes and buildings. We will invest in reducing the impact of climate-related disasters, and we will make zero-emissions vehicles more affordable and put more charging stations across the country. Mr. Speaker, I want to point out that the throne speech that highlights the fact that we believe that Canada cannot reach net zero without the expertise of Canadians in the energy sector. This means Canadians living in provinces such as British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Our government is committed to supporting the natural resource and energy sectors as they transform and transition to a net zero future, a transformation that will create good, stable jobs. We also recognize that farmers, foresters, and ranchers are key partners in this fight against climate change. As we move forward, our government is steadfast in its resolve. We will continue our policy of putting a price on pollution while also putting that money back into the pockets of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, as we press ahead with these policies, we will always remember the values that define us as Canadians. That means everything from welcoming immigrants with kindness to celebrating the contributions of those in the LGBTQ2 communities and embracing our 2 official languages. And we must never forget that much more needs to be done to work with Indigenous peoples. We will do that on many fronts, from responding to the national inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, to making more investments in clean drinking water. And we will introduce legislation to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples before the end of this year. In recent months, many in our country have called for action to finally address the systemic racism experienced by Indigenous people and Black and racialized Canadians. Our government is pledging to take action. We will also move to prevent online hate, further the economic empowerment of certain communities, and increase hiring in the public service. Moreover, we'll take action in the policing and justice systems. We will introduce legislation to address the systemic inequities in all phases of the criminal justice system, from sentencing to rehabilitation. We will modernize training for police and law enforcement, including standards on the use of force, and we will reform the RCMP with a shift towards community-led policing. Mr. Speaker, these are just some of the highlights of the throne speech. They reflect a government that is intent on working hard for Canadians as they face the challenges of the pandemic that has changed history this year. Our government is realistic about the gravity of these challenges, but we are confident that Canadians can emerge from these unsettling times stronger and even more united about what draws us together. Our government has a plan to put us on that road to recovery. I would ask all members of this House to support our plan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question commentaire. The honourable member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's another medical crisis that is parallel to the pandemic and that has worsened in large cities like Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, in small cities and in Indigenous communities. And I'm talking about the opioid crisis. In my riding of Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge, I shed tears with parents and grandparents who lost their children and loved ones. More than 16,000 people have died since 2016, and in British Columbia, more than 5 times more people have died of an overdose this year than of COVID-19. What young people and older addicts need is access to hope, to clean medication. They need to focus on the future. Here in the capital on Friday is a day, and we must invest significantly in treatment. Last week in Maple Ridge, I visited some rehabilitation centers like Hope and Freedom House, and I was very moved when I heard them talk about men and women sharing their stories of delivery. There aren't enough of these types of centers, and they lack funding. Mr. Speaker, my question for the member opposite is this. When will the Liberals coordinate with the provinces to help addicts to get the treatment they need? And when will we see tangible action to resolve these problems? Not just one sentence.
The honourable member for Davenport.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for his excellent question. It is absolutely heart-wrenching to hear these stories. We have heard loud and clear that there is another pandemic that's happening across Canada. We know that it's killing many people. We know it has to do with the fact that literally poison is being sold on our streets. And so that's why I was very proud that our government announced, and I know in the city of Toronto they had announced 2 safe supply sites. That means safe supply was actually provided to 2 key centres within the City of Toronto. We worked directly with the City of Toronto to be able to provide this as quickly as possible. The Minister of Health has also started a 30-day consultation period to see how it is that we could actually increase these pilots and what more we can do to urgently tackle this other pandemic that is killing way too many lives across Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for her speech. I'd like to hear her talking about an increase in old age security. They made a promise in the last campaign to bring the age down, and we're also asking for increases in the amounts for seniors, but they're still waiting for an increase. Last December, and I can remember very clearly, it was the 6th of December, I asked the minister, I put a question to the minister at QP, and I said, why not increase old age security as of age 65 and not 75 in order to avoid creating 2 categories of seniors? When we came back in January, we asked again. We said from age 65 on, it should be increased. Now, with the pandemic, the financial security of these people has worsened. And some of them only received some $200 or $300 once. So now we're facing a situation. We're on the eve of the second wave. Seniors have only received one check. Others have received more. So my question is this: when will the Liberals increase OAS as of age 65, not 75? Poverty doesn't wait until people hit 75. Rate increases don't wait for that. The cost of groceries goes up before people hit 75. It's the same with medication. Seniors can't wait until the age of 75. Why does the government not taking action on this issue?
Davenport.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say thank you so much to the honourable member for an excellent question. We indeed need to focus on our seniors. I was very proud that in our last mandate, we reduced the retirement age from 67 to 65. That had a huge impact on our seniors, and it gave them immediate access. It gave them sooner access to CPP. We also increased GIS, the Guaranteed Income Supplement, for those seniors at the lowest end of the income scale. And we've also made a commitment, Mr. Speaker, that if you reach the age of 75 and over, we are going to increase old age security by 10%. And we're also looking at increasing the CPP for those survivors, for survivors, so people who are widowed. And I'll also remind everyone in this House, as well, Mr. Speakers, that we've made a huge commitment around long-term care standards for our seniors, making sure that if they do enter one of these homes, that they are taken care of, and they are taken care in a way that allows them to lead their lives with dignity and with a great quality of life. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Elmwood Transcona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to start by saying how grateful I am to have the opportunity to be here in the House once again, and what an honour it is to represent people in Elmwood Transcona who, like everywhere across the country and indeed the world, have been suffering and struggling through this global pandemic that we're experiencing. I have to say, having listened to the speech from the throne, that I don't think it really justifies having prorogued Parliament when we still had another summer sitting to come. With the expiration of CERB coming, we had an opportunity at the end of August to get together to talk about what would be replacing CERB, and now we're only days away from the deadline. We still don't have legislation tabled in the House. There's only just beginning to be conversations between the government and opposition parties meaningfully about the details of that replacement. It was shameful for the government to have shut down Parliament when that important item was before us, and now we have a speech from the throne with hardly anything new in it. And I heard the honourable member mention some initiatives that the government is contemplating for people living with disabilities. Well, would they please just deliver on the payment that they promised people living with disabilities in the spring on an emergency basis? And I think, frankly, Mr. Speaker, that they need to get that done. And I wonder why it is that people living with disabilities and seniors who've been promised things by this government, another repeated promise that we've heard again and again about raising the old age supplement for seniors, promised again, but not delivered. Now we have new promises for people living with disabilities who are still waiting on the emergency promise that was made for them in the spring. So when is that payment going to be made? And when are they going to actually deliver on these? Or are we going to be hearing about it in the next speech from the throne?
Honourable member for Davenport.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for his question. I too am anxious to get to some action, and for me, I'm very proud of the speech from the throne. I don't think it's just words. I think that we've made enormous commitments around key things that for too long we've not taken action in terms of childcare and moving towards a national childcare program, long-term care standards for seniors. That is something that is much needed, and we're making a firm commitment to that. Moving forward on pharmacare, we know how important that is. Affordable housing, it is a historic promise that we are making around ending, on eliminating chronic homelessness in Canada. I'm very proud of the promises and the actions that we are committing to in this throne speech. I very much look forward to receiving the support from everyone in this House so that we can get going and implementing each of these actions. Thank you.
Time for questions and comments has almost expired, but because last time I took an extra question, I will take one this time as well. The Honourable Member for Kingston and the Islands.
And I want to thank my colleague for her intervention today in response to the speech from the throne. I know that the member from Davenport, feels very strongly about our environment and our commitments to making sure that we fulfill promises with respect to the environment. And one of the things that I found to be quite promising in the speech from the throne, Mr. Speaker, was where it said the government will immediately bring forward a plan to exceed Canada's 2030 climate goal. The government will also legislate Canada's goal of net zero emissions by 2050. And then they lay out a number of items of how they will do that through a plan. I'm wondering if the member from Davenport can comment on how she feels about this, given her commitment to the environment and her commitment to making a better, greener future for generations to come.
Honourable Member for Davenport.
Hey. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for his excellent question. I will tell you, in my riding of Davenport, if you eliminate all the calls and the emails around emergency support programs, the number one email and request is that we move towards a green recovery, that we do not forget our commitments to climate change, that we do not forget that climate change is happening, and that we do not forget that as we're rebuilding and restarting the economy, that we ensure that climate action is the cornerstone of our economic plan. And I'm pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, that climate action is the cornerstone of our plan to support and create millions of jobs across the country. And one of the key parts that I'm especially really pleased about is that we have made a commitment to legislate Canada's goal of net zero emissions by 2050. No longer can we move backwards on tackling climate change. We are moving forwards. And in addition, and I don't have time because you've just given me the motion, but there is a huge plan about how it is that we're going to invest in moving towards a low carbon future, in a sustainable economy by creating thousands of jobs, green energy, green infrastructure, etc. Thanks so much, Mr. Speaker.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Portage-Liscar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to just congratulate everyone today who has participated in the speaking, the debate, the questions and answers around today's speech from the throne. I know that our leader, the member from Durham, would very much like to have participated in this, as I know the leader from the Bloc Party would have, and I know we all wish both of these gentlemen and their families the very best of health and quick recovery, and we appreciate them so much. Mr. Speaker, it would be, I have to say we are disappointed. We prorogued Parliament, the Prime Minister prorogued Parliament for this speech from the throne, and we are not happy with what we're seeing, and we will have more to say about that tomorrow and in the days ahead. But at this time, I will move, seconded by the member from Louis St. Laurent, that the debate do now adjourn. Thank you.
Ms. Bergen, seconded by Mr. Deltel, moves that the debate be now adjourned. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Yes? We? Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Carried. And the Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by the Minister for Infrastructure, that this House do now adjourn.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez, seconded by Ms. McKenna, moves that this House do now adjourn. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion?
We?
Yes? I don't see any no's. Yes? Carried.
En conséquence, la Chambre.
Accordingly, this House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m. pursuant to Standing Order 24-1.
you.